May be polluting less than many people think. That's according to a group of researchers who say the estimates used to calculate carbon emissions are inaccurate. So what might all of this mean for Beijing and for climate change, for that matter? CCTV's Rowie Ruttenberg is in our newsroom following this story for us. Rowie, China has been facing mounting pressure, of course, to announce new carbon cuts. How might this affect all of that?
Well, first, for starters, Mike, it'll affect the point of departure. In the future, China will be able to more accurately look back and say, this is how much we cut. But I think now what's important is the idea that there might be more to the numbers than meets the eye.
It's called the emissions factor, a standard number used to determine how much carbon is produced when a ton of coal is burned. After years of universal application, researchers now say the figure is unfair.
The situation in China is kind of different compared with the developed countries. The coal quality in China is much lower than the global average, and especially lower than the coal that's from US or EU.
The result, he says, Chinese coal actually emits less carbon dioxide than coal in the West, 40% less. When mixed into China's annual emissions that includes other energy production, the miscalculation amounts to a nearly 15% overestimation, meaning globally China is polluting less than everyone thought. Researchers say the revised numbers allow China to have a more accurate baseline to work with at upcoming climate negotiations in Paris.
After this study, the first time we get the very concrete and comprehensive data of how much of the carbon emission has been produced. So based on this, we could address more concrete actions to mitigate our carbon emission.
But changing numbers is one thing, changing behavior is another.
The air pollution issue, the carbon emission issue are all related with the energy system. And China is still in front of very high carbon intensive energy system. It needs to be translated into a low carbon developed way to get a sustainable development.
China is the world's biggest developing country, supplying produced goods to much of the world. Even with the new calculations, China still leads in annual carbon emissions, 2/3 more than the US.
Mike, the new numbers may provide some good news for Chinese officials, but in the long term, researchers say the benefit is accuracy. Global emissions, of course, will still need to be cut, but having the right numbers, they say, is a better place to start.
Well, let's look at the globe, Roy. This might have some ramifications for other countries as well, correct?
Indeed it might. You know, there are other large developing nations, particularly in what's called the global south, countries like India and Indonesia. They may have their numbers reassessed since they too are burning some of this cheaper coal that's been described. And I imagine having a more accurate representation of what's their actual contribution to global gas emissions, I should say, will better place them, like China, to negotiate more realistic cuts and cuts that they're probably more comfortable with. Mike?